Kaneki, a troubled soul and tragic character in Tokyo Ghoul, immensely colorful as an individual amidst his overwhelming greyish tones. A gentle boy that grew forcibly into a heartless man, back to a kind naive adult, back to a ruthless suicidal shell, changed into a temporary form of coexistence, only to fall again, crack again, putting back the pieces, settling for just a person who lives to right his wrongdoings, continuing to live and love and believe. This is the story of a tragedy with a happy resolution amidst the anger, the desperation, the anguish, and the fear and the violence. A look into Kaneki's core self as a character and his many shattered pieces. A look into the beautiful tragedy that is Ken Kaneki. Let's start from the beginning. A while back I was asked to make a video clarifying Kaneki's multiple personality changes and discussing the character's original one at the start of the series. Admittedly, this subject matter isn't as clear-cut as it probably could have been, particularly if you're an anime-only fan of the show. So in order to explain it the best I can in the simplest way possible, I'll be using the context and added information from the source material that the adaptation failed to incorporate in the story, in order to lay down a structured guideline that will hopefully end the current confusion that some of you, if not a lot of you watching, may have. The first time Ken is introduced as the main protagonist, he's this timid, quiet, apparently normal 18-year-old young man who enjoys reading books more than interacting with other people. His only friend Hide is the only one in his life who he has kept in touch and confines himself with to a certain extent after he lost his mother and left his aunt's household, trusting him and loving him more than anyone else. The little information we get about his past is revealed by him sparingly in a conversation with Rize, such as the reason why he's so attached to books and reading them, the belongings left by his father, but also his mother's passing, which plays a key role in the character's way of acting, personal beliefs, and eventual change in the Aguri trio. Ken is similar to a character like Shinji from Evangelion, in the sense they're both very reserved, keeping their true feelings and emotions to themselves, hiding themselves inside a fabricated shell. Although like Ikari, the topic of abandonment is only brought up later in the story when Kaneki is confronted directly by Rize, as he processes those insecurities by simply denying and twisting them altogether. It can also be said Kaneki is more selfless, in the sense he's afraid to hurt others not just because of himself, as he isn't afraid of getting hurt and therefore refrains from harming others to prevent that, but because he was taught at an early age by his mother to think first about others and their feelings, to be kind first, even at the expense of your own suffering and self-harm. An ideology that even long after he initially forsake it, still indirectly influences his actions and way of thinking. That pain that he self-inflicts on himself leads to an eventual self-loathing that in turn hurts others around him that he meets along the way and establishes strong bonds, in many ways beyond just pushing them away. As it becomes apparent in the manga when Kaneki faces Arima for the first time, when he becomes the Black Reaper. The pain that was consistently inflicted on him, the fear of it, of physical torture, of emotional and psychological anguish, of continuous loss and regret and weakness becomes worse and worse, awakening those suicidal tendencies dormant inside, seen early on in panels such as this. Whereas the surgery to implant Rize's organs is occurring, Kaneki instinctively, with no care in the world, accepts the warm taste of death for the first time, giving himself completely to it. The only moment where we truly see him in a state of pure and genuine peace, before Rize's soul even touches him, free from all the worries and terrible experiences of the past, the present, and the future. Just the fact his life gets completely turned upside down when he becomes a ghoul is enough to break his emotional state of mind in a blink of an eye. Yes, Kaneki's life was already flawed and painful, but at the very least he had finally found some form of stability, living by himself after parting his abusive lifestyle at the hands of his aunt, having Hide at his side. None of it even remotely comparable to almost dying a brutal and violent death, only to come back to the land of the living to spend the rest of his days lost in a world where he's neither human or a ghoul, but both, leaving him in constant peril and turmoil because of it. This inner turmoil is portrayed physically in order to visually represent the many stages of self-change made to the character throughout. Ultimately, there are two distinct main tones of hair color that portray Kaneki in different lights, white and dark. In part 1 we see this manifestation take place through Ken's original self with the black hair, and the white self after Jason's torture. Kaneki's hair shifts to white as his innocence dies, and is enlightened by Rize about the truth of the world. Those who let others harm them and their loved ones are weak and are bound to be eaten by the strong. His ideology till that point changes, and so does his hair alongside his personality, symbolizing a form of enlightenment that it was lacking before. Our protagonist thought his eyes had been opened, and that he gained the strength capable to protect those he previously couldn't, without fully succumbing to his ghoulish and stable nature. A lie, as he continued to lose, tormented by his lust for power, the more he killed and devoured, the more alone he walked this new path he carved for himself in his quest to take down Auguri to protect his found new family that in his mind almost died because of him, because of his weakness. Ultimately, he falls having found no salvation in that enlightenment, but instead damnation, until he is given a second chance in the form of Heise, the embodiment of both Kaneki's remaining and hidden past failures and Sasaki's new open future, as the black and white tones in his hair suggest. Ken fails the first time in part 1 because instead of living his life, understanding both worlds, both ghouls and humans, as he tries in the beginning, he merely chooses one side, one way of life, ignoring the bigger picture as the manager professed to him. Death dances swiftly around him, and he embraces it, giving his life away for a purpose he views meaningful, instead of pushing through, press forward, like a centipede. In part 2 or Tokyo Ghoul Re, the order of appearance of both hair colors is reversed. Ken comes back, his memories come back alongside Heise's. They're now one and the same. It's still the same individual as before the memory loss, the torture, the same Kaneki, but one that has now to live as both an investigator and a ghoul whose past ties are still threatened to be broken, and that terrifies him. Tsukiyama, Inami, Toka, Yomo, Ayato, all the people he knows, all the people he cherishes. He has to make a choice. Choose the Quink Squad, Akira, Arima, his newfound family, or his old one instead. Kaneki is cornered in the same place he once was before, a dead end. This is the moment he's most vulnerable, truly alone, lost. He has no place he belongs to, only a selfish wish that will spare him from witnessing any more people he cares about dying, by sacrificing himself, by not solving the issue and conflict at hand that will never cease to exist as long as the wheel continues to spin, only buying time. At this point in the story, the only person who could have brought him to his senses, who could have saved him from the bleak mindset, was eaten, amidst his madness, or so he believed. Killed. The only friend who was there for him at the end, the last memory after his encounter with Arima and eventual demise. It pushes him over the edge. He has always been Kaneki's pillar, so when a version of himself appears to him inside his mind and tells him to keep fighting despite the pain, the suffering, and the anguish, he does so. He's enlightened once again. Not by revenge or desperation, but by love. Love for the ones already gone, and for those still alive. He finally accepts his kinder self, his old self, but he also embraces the experiences he endured and shared with everyone he met along the way. Just like someone who changes through time after many experiences he or she acquires along the way, so too does our protagonist. This version of Kaneki is the amalgamation of all that came before. Every trial, loss, and hardship, every laughter and gentle feeling. This is the same Ken Kaneki from the beginning of the story, and yet he isn't, as he'll never be able to go back to that pure, naive version of himself after all that he's went through. Yes, he stumbles once again before Dragon. He still loses in the end, all because he takes it all on himself. He's tricked into believing he became strong enough to save all of them, all of the persecuted ghouls, his family, spare all of the investigators that meant something to him, all to then lose. Instead of living his life as himself, he merely fills another role, the same as before, only this time as a savior. As Hide tells Toki in part 1, Kaneki was always a terrific actor, putting on a mask, hiding his true self from everyone around him, pretending to be someone he really isn't. That's his ultimate downfall. Ken is no king. He was never meant to be the hero of the story. It's only when he realizes that he finally completes his arc, the final step to true enlightenment, to the alignment of self. By embracing both his victories and all of his mistakes, by accepting his sins, his past and current failures, by confronting Rize one more time and making peace with his own subconscious that will constantly be there to see him fail, does he get out of the pit, and simply tries to do the best he can do, not to fix the things he broke, but to keep them afloat, with the help of others, no longer carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, all the burden by himself alone anymore. That's why this tale of tragedy ends with a happy ending. It ends with the hope that even in your imperfection, even if you're broken, you can still live a life with meaning and closure, by surrounding yourself with people who accept you for what you really are, and that you can share your pain with, your flaws with, regardless of your own insecurities and self-loathing. Love yourself. Embrace the aspects you hate about yourself. Only then will you be able to care and love those who are precious to you. Live a life you won't regret by believing in yourself, flawed and all. I adore the character of Kaneki for how real and nuanced Suishida wrote him to be, for how much I see myself in him despite being fictional. As always, I love making this video, but I guess this one was extra special because of how personal it is to me. Thank you all for watching this video, and thank you Royal L for suggesting me to make it. If you too have any suggestions for certain topics you want me to discuss, be free to do so in the comments below. Yes, I read all of the comments. I hope you enjoyed. Please stay safe, stay well, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Ciao. Matane.